Vincent Van Gogh, people told him, you can't be a great painter, you only have one ear. You know what he said? I can't hear you.
Listening to Sippin' Sports, a Phillies sports talk morning show with Chris, KJ, and Dalt. Proudly powered by 302 Birds. Let's take it to the...
Good morning, everybody. Happy Saturday morning. Of course, welcome to another episode of Sippin' Sports Podcast, breaking down everything new for you in the crazy world of Philly sports. Chris, you're still rocking that trophy, my man. I think we're going to be rocking these bad boys for the whole year.
All summer long. I mean, we're champions, so I'm putting it up here. We're gonna have it every single episode I'm on. I'm raising the trophy anytime we're talking about Eagles because they are champions. You can't take it away from them. And fuck Darius Slay.
Well, that's a great way to kick off the show because there is a ton of drama going on. Whether you're still in big play Slay's graces or if you're not in Darius Slay's graces, either way. We're going to break it down for you. Chris, you're giving me a good idea. I kind of want to mount one of these to the front of my bicycle this season, I'm thinking, for at the shore, like right in the middle. So that way every Dallas fan, when I drive down the boardwalk, just has to be reminded that we've gotten two of them in our lifetime. And they've gotten none.
So when I was on my vacation, I was in the airport, and this guy comes up to me that worked in the airport. I think he was a janitor or something. But he's like, hey, you can't wear that hat in here. I'm a Dallas fan. I'm like, well, I'm sorry for you then. Fuck you. Go Birds.
Yes, well said, like a true Philly fan. But we got a lot on tap for you guys. Chris and I are ready to break down the Phillies getting lit up, especially Jesús Luzardo, the NHL trade deadline yesterday. We got an awesome special guest backstage that we're going to break down, JV, with our NFL talk, so stay tuned for that. Like I said, we'll be talking about the Slay drama, the CJ-GJ drama, some free agency updates, and we're even going to give our opinion on the top 4 quarterbacks in the NFL and who's really elite. So Chris, I, and JV are all going to dive into that. But Chris, let's go ahead and get into the Phillies first, my brother. I mean, Luzardo, I think I saw in the stat, I haven't watched too much spring training, but he got 3 home runs, hit him in one game.
Yeah, I think it was back-to-back pitches. One of them was a grand slam. And it's a shame because, like, before that, he looked like he was pitching really well. I mean, he was in high 90s. But, I mean, there's a reason the guy had a 5 ERA last year. So, I don't buy all the hype that Luzardo has. I don't think it was a terrible trade. But I just don't think Luzardo is the next, star pitcher that everybody's talking about. I mean, I heard Tom McCarthy the other day saying this pitching rotation was as good as 2011. Like, no, what are you talking about? Like, they have Zach Wheeler is just as good as any of those pitchers they had in 2011. But besides that, they don't really compare. Like, Aaron Nola is not as good as Cliff Lee. The other guys, they just don't compare. So we'll see. I mean, it's early in spring training still, so Luzardo can figure it out. But I don't think he's that superstar that everybody thinks he's going to be.
Is there a guy, I know Andy Painter, they're talking about having more of an impact this year. Is there a guy that you're really looking forward to pitching-wise for the Phillies to watching this year, either in the bullpen or that could emerge as a starter like Painter?
Maybe Painter. But, I mean, I don't think they're going to force Painter too much just because he's coming off that arm injury. The bullpen's going to be very interesting. There's some new faces. Jordan Romano, to me, is the one to keep an eye out for. If he's good, then I think that bullpen's going to be pretty good. If he's bad, I think that bullpen's going to struggle some. Because they did lose. They lost Hoffman last year, And I mean, I know Estevez wasn't great down the stretch, but Estevez was still a good pitcher for them. So it's going to be intriguing to see how this bullpen can bounce back from last year. It's definitely a different bullpen. And we'll see if Kerkering can take a step forward too.
Yeah, Kerkering's a great take. I think he's someone that we've seen flashes from. I know, like, here we go. It's the amateur fan, the guy that watches a couple baseball games a year, 16 out of 160. No, but I remember him last year being a guy that, especially Shard, I know, had a lot of hope for. We all did in that Phillies group chat. And there were times, especially in the regular season, that he came in and he delivered. I don't really want to talk about the postseason with the Phillies. We all know why. But something's got to change. I mean, it's spring training, so I'm not going to get too upset. I will say, like, maybe let them get their mistakes out now. I really don't think anyone that's a Phillies fan is going to get too excited until September this year, whether they're winning or if they're losing. Like, either way, we're just
if they're losing, they're going to get excited.
Well, they'll curse. They're always going to curse and piss and moan and complain. But I don't think it's going to be like we know going into this year. Like, I hate to say this, we're probably not going to win a World Series trophy. Like, I'll say that on tape right now, March 8th. I hope I'm wrong. I want to clip this, and I want to have a parade. But unfortunately, I just don't have any faith in them after do you?
No, I honestly, I'm not even sure if they're a playoff team. I feel like these, like, Schwarber and Castellanos are tailing off now in the end of their careers. And that worries me. It's just watching. I mean, again, it's just spring training. It's early in spring training, but they just look like they can't do anything right now. Castellanos had that one home run, but I mean, Schwarber and especially Turner right now, I don't think Turner has a hit yet. So that's a little scary to me. Again, it's spring training, so it doesn't really matter that much. But I just worry that this team's not any better than last year, and the rest of the division got better. Which, if you're third in this division, I don't think you're a playoff team this year.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think being a wild card team, like, if the Phillies can somehow figure out a way to get, like, a happy medium, you know what I mean? Like, that's where I think, like, it's like you don't want to win too many games because you don't want to get too cocky, but you don't want to win too little games because you don't want to be in the playoffs. You want to be, like, at that porridge, right? You want to be just right. And if the Phillies can figure out a way to be, like Shard said in the comments, that wild card team, where they got bounced out last year, I think being a wild card team this year might actually benefit them. Like, somebody actually asked Dombrowski about it on WIP down at spring training, and they said, what do you think the advantage is? And he basically said, look, matter of the fact is you're going to try to win as many games as you can. That's just what you're going to do. And whatever happens, happens. We'll see. We're going to try to win when we get there, and we're going to try to change it. But he did make a good point that teams that have won the World Series in the past couple of years also had catastrophic ends to their seasons before, just like we did. Mm-hmm. So maybe, it'll pay off. The one thing I'll say, too, before we move on to the Flyers is somebody asked, I think it was Bryce or another player, hey, did you watch the Eagles parade? Did that motivate you? And every player that has been asked that has said, yeah, that's very motivating. It's been a good thing for us to see. And, we love our fans. So there's a good, it's like, it's not all bad is what I'm glad it shows the Phillies players that, like, hey, if you do your job, it can be pretty damn good. So let's get to it.
I mean, they still have talent on paper. Yeah. Like, they're still a very talented team. I worry about how they respond to last year. And it almost feels how, like, the Eagles were a couple years ago, where they just went out after the Super Bowl and, they made the playoffs, but they fell apart at the end of the year. And I just kind of have that vibe with this Phillies team. Like, they're good enough, but there's just something that's not there right now. And I feel like they should have had a little bit of a change in the locker room this offseason, and they didn't. It's the same guys. Like, I don't know. I'm not there on this team. They haven't been able to win it before. I don't think they're able to win it again. So we'll see.
Yeah, we will see. But the Flyers are making some moves. So I just want to show a little clip beforehand. I mean, I might as well.
Speak me back check, for check, and paycheck.
You going to tell me that this guy's not built for Philadelphia right off the bat?
Fuck yeah. You know, they made a lot of moves over the last few months. And, I mean, even trading guys multiple times. So, really, the thing that they've done is just acquired a ton of draft picks. And I know you have the graphic, but they have a ton of draft picks here. They keep trading guys for more picks. And, you know, that's what you want to do in a rebuild. It's almost like what the Sixers did. Now, this sounds terrible because the way they wound up.
Just let it out, Chris. You know you want to.
But, like, with the amount of draft picks they had, the amount of high draft picks they had, I mean, I feel like the Sixers just suck so much that they fucked it up. But it's kind of hard to fuck this up now. I mean, you have a lot of picks. They have, 8 picks in the first 3 rounds next year? This year, like,
wow.
And look at all that's a ton of picks. And they're going to be high. I know most of them are going to be pretty high picks. So if they can build around Mitchkov, who's 20 years old, and they can build around some of these younger guys, trading away Scott Lawton. I mean, Scott Lawton was here for 12 years. They identified, okay, they're not going to win a championship with Scott Lawton. They're not going to make the playoffs with Scott Lawton. Let's trade him. Good move. Even like Kuzmenko, who they just got, a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, if that. Like, okay, this guy doesn't have it. They flipped him for a third-round pick. Good move. Keep those draft picks flowing. When you're a rebuilding team, get as many draft picks as possible. And then, you know, either you use them or you trade them and get more players. So we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, I like how you put it. It's hard to fuck up. I mean, that's pretty much the best Philly way to sum it up. If you guys look at this, I mean, yeah, loaded. So I'm interested to see how this year's draft goes for them, like after the season.
Mm-hmm.
Because I guess, like you said, 8 picks in the first 3 rounds, 7 of them. They're going to get a lot of depth in that second round. That's going to be the new age Flyers that you're going to see. That's going to be, okay, this is a new era, like Chris just said. They're trying to usher in a new era. They're trying to identify guys that they can win a championship with, that they can go to the playoffs with, that will be a Flyer for a long time, but are younger. You know, as a franchise, as a team in any sport, any professional sport, you're always trying to get younger. And I think that this indicates that the Flyers have invested in that. Also, their trade. How did you feel about the trade? Did you think it was a good move, bad move? Were you happy with them?
They made 3 trades.
So either, I guess the 2 players, I can't even name them because, you know, I don't watch hockey.
Yeah, what was it?
Here, let me.
Eric Johnson for Giovanni Smith. Giovanni, I don't know how to pronounce it. It was a whatever trade. I mean, the guy they traded kind of sucks, and the guy they get back kind of sucks. I don't even know if he's actually going to be a Flyer. I think that was more of a Eric Johnson was with Colorado for a long time. He won a championship there. It would almost be like, I don't want to say Zach Ertz because Zach Ertz is really good, but if Zach Ertz got traded back to the Eagles this year to play the last season of his career, that kind of thing. So it was kind of like a whatever trade, and you know, it didn't cost them anything. They didn't get anything back, whatever. So the other one with Scott Lawton, that's a really good trade because they got a top 5 prospect back too. I don't know much about him either because I'm not a huge hockey guy, but I've just read that he's a pretty good prospect. So not only did they get rid of Scott Lawton, they got a high pick and a guy who, you know, is almost like another draft pick.
Yeah, that's humongous. Nikita Gribinkin. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that, but that guy I think is going to fit right in here. We showed the clip earlier of his personality. Philadelphia fans resonate with that stuff. They love it. And like Chris said, the fact that they got a first-round draft pick yesterday, too, out of all of that, it's like, I think Briere is really taking a step like, okay, like enough screwing around with this team. Like, I need to save my job. I need to show them that I want to do something. I need to show them that I'm willing to usher in the new era. And like Chris said, too, like, I'm not going to be emotionally attached to Scott Lawton. If he can't win a championship, even though he's been here for 12 years, like, you got to just buy low, sell high. Mm-hmm. You know, that's sometimes sports. And it really sucks to say that sometimes, but that's sometimes how it goes in this market. But actually getting ready to move on to our next topic and welcome in our guest. Somebody that I've been a friend of for a long time now, 2 years, I think, but I haven't actually gotten a podcast with him. So you guys are in for a real treat because I love his content. But all the way from Canada, welcome to the show, JV.
What's up, Dalt? I apologize. I don't have the proper attire on today, but we're working on the Philly stuff. Thanks for having me.
It's all right. Like Doug Peterson just came from there. I mean, he got like an unfair firing. But other than that, man, it's all good. I mean, how are you feeling about everything NFL-wise as a whole? I know you don't really have a team specifically. You told me you do tend to root for the Bills. So I guess you can thank us Eagles fans for getting the job done for you, pal. But I mean, how are you feeling about the NFL season going into this year? What are you looking forward to seeing just as a fan and moving forward?
No, I thought just, tracing back to the Super Bowl, it was good to see a fresh new set of faces winning the Super Bowl. I won't lie to you. I know Philly, maybe they're not the most liked team in the world, but I think they're more liked than the Chiefs were heading into the Super Bowl. So it was pretty good to see them take down. We always root against the guys that are winning, right? No matter how they're winning, if they're winning fairly or not. So I thought it was good to see Philly with a younger roster too, kind of develop and build themselves into another Super Bowl team like they did a few years back. And I mean, heading into this season, obviously, like you said, Dalt, as a Bills fan, I'm rooting for Josh Allen, but I do think we're going to start to see some new faces emerge in the AFC specifically. So that'll be good to see. And I want to see how the Chiefs rebound as well from their three-peat attempt.
Yeah, that three-peat attempt, I mean, keyword attempt. My buddy Jack said it to me in the car yesterday, and he said, do you think that the Eagles have any shot of doing it? I said, let's get to the second first. But hey, who knows? I mean, they're built for it. The Chiefs definitely were. But the problem with the Eagles, and we'll just get right into our first topic of NFL, is when you have this kind of drama, you got these things off the field, and I'll just show this video clip first to show you guys how you guys can decide and watch the clip. But Darius Slay, Big Play Slay, however you want to. Chris is going to identify him as Darius Slay from now on. I'll still call him Big Play, so we'll play devil's advocate. But however you identify him, basically you could say, I don't want to say threw shade at CJGJ. I think he was praising Reed Blankenship, in my opinion, but he did have a chance to name CJGJ. Watch it for your guys' self.
I do got a great leadership role in that secondary room, but I won't be surprised if Reed and them guys like Reed can, advance these guys. Reed being around me and a lot of other veterans that have been here before. And I'm sure he could lead that group the right way. Because that's who I feel will be leading the group if I ain't in that building is Reed Blankenship, because he's a great leader. You know what I'm saying? He is a great damn leader. If they bring another veteran in that's already been playing a lot, I can see them coming in and being a leader as well. But for sure, if I'm not in that room, Reed Blankenship, will be a great, tremendous leader, a great one. And, I'm going to miss it.
Yeah, I can see why you're going to miss playing here, Slay. It's been kind of two-faced, though. We've heard mixed things. I'll let you take it first, Chris. I mean, what's your opinion on all of it?
I mean, I really didn't give a shit about all the drama stuff initially. It's when you told me he didn't show up to that charity event last night, that's where I have the problem. I almost feel like CJ should just let it go, whatever. Like Reed Blankenship has been on the team for a while. Chauncey, yeah, he was here before, but he left and then came back. Like, talked a lot of shit when he left. Like, it's a different position too. I mean, I think Reed is more of the, besides Bond, is more of the quarterback of the defense back there. I mean, we know CJ is going to talk his shit, but it's almost like just let it go right now. Like, it's not even worth it. And then the whole, I know we're going to get into the quarterback debate thing later, but that's a nothing to me too. It's like, whatever. We won a Super Bowl. Like, why is this more than what it is?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, JV, from an outside opinion, do you think that Philly fans are overanalyzing, or do you see a little bit of what they're saying here?
Yeah, so Philly media gets a lot of attention, whether or not it's actually real or just kind of formulated and fabricated by people who want to stir the pot. And I think Philly fans, and, you know, this isn't against you, Dalt, or you guys on the show, but I feel like they have a tendency sometimes to blow some stuff out of proportion when it's kind of unnecessary. You know what I mean? So I think I had a little more of an issue. And again, I'm not a Philly fan, so I don't really have a personal vendetta against Darius Slay right now. But I think I had a more of an issue with what Darius Slay said or indirectly said about Jalen Hurts compared to just praising Reed Blankenship.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just kind of an overreaction. He didn't like go out of his way to say, hey, I don't think that CJGJ's built for that. It was the fact that he said, hey, if another veteran comes in here, that's where it's kind of like, why wouldn't you just name CJ? CJ's already there. Like, why wouldn't you give the props to him? I don't know. There were a couple other things. Like, he went on a podcast this week too with a Commanders fan, like a streamer. And the guy asked him, he said, hey, would you come to Washington next year? And he said, hey, if the price is right. That sounds very different from what he said to us Eagles fans a couple weeks ago, which is he wants to play in Philly or for the Lions. I'm sure that's where he wants to play, but, you know, money talks either way. I get it. It's a business. But it's like Philadelphia is not the city to play that game. Like, you can't be two-faced and, like, play that game of where you say one thing and then a couple, like, they'll remember. We have notes. Like, we don't have a life. You know, we remember. So it's just kind of, like, frustrating for me. Because there was also the thing with the Jalen Hurts, right? He went on a podcast, and that'll be a topic we talk about here in a minute as well. But he named his top 4 QBs, and the dude left Jalen Hurts off the list. Well, if you look at Slay's Instagram, it's probably still up on his story. There's a story where he pulls a receipt of him praising Jalen Hurts after the Super Bowl. No shit, you're praising him after the Super Bowl. You guys just won a championship together. Of course you're going to salute the guy who's your QB. But to me, it's like, I would think if you won a Super Bowl with that QB, you would always name him. Like, remember how when Tyreek Hill left the Chiefs, he still would praise Patrick Mahomes, at least for a year or two. Maybe, I know he went on that podcast with the Tua thing, and that was a year later. But if you guys remember, right away, I remember he still praised Mahomes. And I thought, hey, that's admirable. You won a Super Bowl with him. Like, it's real. It's realistic. It's just not realistic to me. Like, you're really going to say some of these other guys. So I don't know. I don't know if Slay's trying to stir the pot. I don't know if Slay wants to be done. But either way, I think that this is pretty much cut the cord for all of us Eagles fans, because CJGJ is going to be here for a while. And if these two can't play nice in the sandbox, we're trying to go get another championship. So there's no reason I see them bringing back an aging corner that's going to just argue with people. Like, the last thing I'll say about it, and it's no disrespect to either of these guys, but WIP said it, and I laughed at the quote. I wouldn't call them a clown, but somebody on WIP called them both a clown. And he said, hey, you can have 2 clowns in the car, but you can't have 1. And I get what he's trying to say. You can have 2 alpha, like, vocal players on defense, you know what I mean? But not 2. And I kind of get that. Like, on defenses, like, there's defenses with multiple leaders, but usually there's one dude who's that alpha. And I feel like now the next generation for Eagles fans, it's going to be CJGJ.
I think it's Bond. I think Bond's already that leader.
He could be.
Yeah, I think it's either Bond or you know, one of the guys on the D line, like Carter or even Jordan Davis. But CJ talks. That's all CJ does. Like, not that he's not a good player, but like, CJ is a talker. He talks out of his ass a lot.
Yeah.
Like, there's some times where, like, this week, just shut up, please. Just let it go.
Stop. Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
we don't need this extra drama. Of course, Slay's going to be salty that he just got cut. You think he didn't want to come back here for another year? Absolutely, he did. But, like, just the complaining by CJ, it's just like, just stop, please. Go enjoy your off season. Talk shit once the season starts again on other teams, not ours.
Yeah, it's just unprofessional, and it doesn't feel real. Like, you're going to have to see this dude in 2 months or in a month. You're going to tell me you're not going to go to the ring ceremony? Both of you aren't going to go to the ring ceremony where you won a Super Bowl for the first. You're both going to be there. What are you going to do? You're going to stand in the corner over there. You're going to stand in the corner over there because you two don't want to face each other. Like, shut up, shake hands. You guys won a Super Bowl together. You two are great players. Like, enough. Don't do this kind of stuff because they don't need it. So hopefully they get through it. But Chris, you kind of alluded to it earlier. I think you hit the nail on the head. Vaughn is definitely an underrated leader on this team. And Philadelphia Eagles did the wise decision. Quick free agency update. They signed Zach Vaughn to 3 years. What are your initial thoughts on that?
Wonderful. I'm glad he's back. I think it's probably a little bit too much money because he had one good season. But, if he plays like he did last year, it's not an overpay at all. And if he truly is the leader that I think he is, of course it's worth it. So Howie knows how to move the cap around too. So the fact he was able to get Vaughn back, I love it. I love it.
Yeah, it was humongous. It was great for them. JV, did you think it was a little bit of an overpay?
Not from what I saw, Dalt. I thought Chris made a good point. Like, when you're discussing a leader on defense, you're looking for a guy that can probably keep his cool. The temperament's kind of on a low. We've seen kind of Jalen Carter and CJ Gardner-Johnson have their own things. And obviously, like, there's a place for that too. But I think Zach Vaughn as a whole, the way he played this year, for you to have an all-pro year and then to just completely fall off, like, I find it difficult to believe that's going to happen. Now, maybe he's not an all-pro or maybe not a first-team all-pro next year, but when you got a guy that's that talented and performs up to that level in a Super Bowl season that builds this defense that was flat out incredible for the back half of the season, I mean, I think it's difficult for you to pass on that, especially if another team gave him the bag and he left and had another all-pro or future all-pro seasons. That would be hard to settle in Philly afterwards, right? So I think it was the right move for the Eagles.
Now, is there any other outside players that you could see the Eagles bringing in, or that you think would be wise for the Eagles to bring in? Because Josh Sweat could walk in in free agency, and we're gonna have a whole edge.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked about Myles Garrett pretty much all season long, and as much as I don't think Philly necessarily needs him, I think the D-line right now is dominant the way that they are. They can still obviously use a reigning defensive player of the year, right? So I think if you're looking in terms of that, maybe there's an option there. Howie can probably work out a contract. But even if they don't fill the spot, Dalt, I think they're fine. They have Nolan Smith, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis. I mean, it's stacked, right? I'm not sure what's going on with Milton Williams. I think they still have to bring him back. I don't know if they'll do that. Probably not, depending on the cap space. I'm sure you guys have a little more info on that. But I think overall, the big name I've heard circulating NFL circles is Myles Garrett. And if that does happen, I mean, save us all, because I'm pretty sure Philly's going for the 3-peat.
Yeah.
Well said, JV. Yeah, it's one of those things where I said to somebody, and I said to people, that if the Patriots were to offer the Eagles the 4th overall pick, I would take it, because I'm taking either Abdul Carter, who I don't have to pay for a couple of years, or Myles Garrett, and it's win now. And I think a lot of people don't understand, like, how valuable, like, a dominating edge is on, like, a championship team. I don't know if you guys remember the Super Bowl when the Broncos beat the Panthers and Von Miller had a big impact in that game. Kind of reminds me of that. Like, you don't have to always be the youngest player either. You can be a little bit older and still at edge dominate. I know I'm talking, my vendetta about AJ. What I'm saying with that is that as the Eagles, you're never going to get a higher value for this dude. So I think that's just something worth considering, is all I'm saying, because it's a business at the end of the day. And I'm sure that Howie is kicking all this around. But now that Slay's gone, and he's probably not coming back because of the way that things have went on Twitter, I think it's pretty much safe to say that you could see something from the Eagles. I actually had a weird gut feeling today. I know free agency doesn't really officially kick off until the 12th, I believe, at 4 p.m., which I guess would be, Wednesday. So shit'll start hitting the fan then. But I got a weird feeling that something could happen today for the Eagles. I just had a weird feeling when I woke up. I think that that'll be, of course, for the rest of the NFL and the Eagles when stuff really starts happening and popping off. But I think that the Eagles' main goal should be get better, but get younger, like a balance. Because if they can get younger, they're just going to be in a better position. They already have really good depth at corner. That's why I wanted to bring back Slay for the experience, but not after all this. It's too much. They got Eli Ricks. That's somebody that people don't talk about. So I don't expect the Eagles to really draft any corners unless it's later rounds. I don't expect them to sign any. Maybe a safety is what I'm thinking of. But as far as free agency goes, I actually wanted to talk about Nick Bolton. I think, okay, you got Nakobe Dean. You got Zach Bond. But the thing is, if one of those guys go down with injury, you're basically screwed beyond that. So I don't know what they would do with Nick Bolton if they would try to pay him a deal. But he's an exceptional linebacker for the Chiefs. He's somebody that I actually wanted the Eagles to draft before the Chiefs drafted him. Because I said, wow, we need a linebacker. Now we have Zach Bond now, and it all worked out. But Nick Bolton's somebody I would keep an eye on. Because sometimes you got to keep in mind, too, the moves that you make aren't all about your team. They are. But sometimes it's like, ooh, I can take this player going from this team. That's one thing with Myles Garrett, like for the Eagles, that I think really should matter, where it's like, ooh, if we take Myles Garrett, we can make sure that the Lions don't get Myles Garrett, or that the Commanders don't get Myles Garrett. And we're going to have to see this guy later down the road. So I think that's something worth considering. But the Birds are headed into the free agency with a lot of confidence. Mitch, what's going on, brother? Glad to see you in here. We're going to keep the show moving now to something that I think is going to be fun. We'll let our guests take it first. But JV, from an outside opinion, this is what got Slay in trouble. Out of these 5 guys, what 4 would you say are elite?
Yeah, so I kind of touched on this a little. I kind of half agreed with what Slay said. So it's kind of weird to just come out and indirectly shoot a jab at Jalen Hurts. Like I didn't really understand it. And people were like, oh, well, he didn't say Hurts was elite directly, but obviously that was the underlying message, right? So it's kind of difficult for me to sit here and say Hurts isn't elite at this point. Like for reference, like he's my 5th best quarterback in the league, like in my eyes, right? And obviously I'm not a Philly fan, and I know that plays into things as well. And I'm a Bills fan as well, right? So I support Josh Allen fully. But I think it's like wrong objectively to say Jalen Hurts is an elite from what he's done, his resume, his winning, his ability to perform in the playoffs, the fact that he was second in MVP voting a few years ago. He's had objectively a really solid career thus far, and he is in the upper echelon of quarterbacks in the league. Now, if you were to tell me, hey, I have a guy like Matthew Stafford over Jalen Hurts, I would disagree, but I wouldn't sit here and shame you for it because Matthew Stafford's had a long career and he's won a Super Bowl, etc. Right? I think it's important to remember that Jalen Hurts has done a lot in this league that a lot of starting quarterbacks haven't right now. And that's where I kind of side with Jalen Hurts a little bit. He's the only quarterback drafted after Mahomes that won a Super Bowl. I'm pretty sure. So that's pretty crazy to think about, right?
Yep.
He's a top 5 quarterback for me. He's at 5. And if you have him higher, I understand. I understand the arguments you could make to have him over some of those guys. Personally, I don't have him there, but to say he's not elite, I think that's a stretch. The only thing I will say, though, is Slay is as close of a source as we're going to get, right? Like, we can talk all we want about our own opinions, but Slay practiced against him and played against him all year long. So I do think it carries a little bit of weight for me. It's kind of interesting to hear, but again, you also have to play the factors play in, right? He just got released, he didn't get re-signed, right? He's not going to go back to Philly, obviously, after all this. So I think you have to take that into account as well in the situation and the context.
Yeah. Chris, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, the only one that I might put Hurts over in this list is Burrow, just because Burrow went to the Super Bowl once and hasn't made it back since. And really, I mean, their team hasn't even really made – they missed the playoffs this year, I think.
Yeah,
that's the only one on that list. Maybe Lamar Jackson, but Lamar Jackson's been so damn good in the regular season. It's such a stats game, and Hurts just doesn't have the elite stats. Which quarterback would I have? If it was what quarterback I want to win me a football game, I'm doing either Hurts or Mahomes on there. But talent-wise, I think all 4 of those guys are better than Hurts right now. That doesn't mean Hurts isn't a good quarterback. Being a being number 5 of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL is not a slight. And I don't think it's a bad thing whatsoever. So I think Hurts is up in that top 5. You could say he's 4, you could say he's 5, you could say he's 3, but I don't think he's top 2.
Yeah, I agree with that. I actually have him at 3, which I think a lot of people will say is high. But number 1 is obviously Mahomes. He has the MVPs and the Super Bowl accolades. Obviously, I don't need to explain that. 2, I actually have Josh Allen. I get the point about, hey, it's a talent. It's an individual like measurement of QB. How good are you playing individually? But I think as a football team, you don't really care about individuality. Like if we're talking about this, let's talk about this from a fandom standpoint, and let's talk about this from an ownership standpoint, because that's what we are. We're fans or we're owners. We're either invested business-wise or we're just people that like watching the team. So we care about accolades. That's how I measure my things. So number 1 is Mahomes. He's got the most accolades. 2, I would probably argue, even though Allen hasn't played in a Super Bowl, he's got the accolades. He's beaten Mahomes a couple of times. He has the MVP. He had, the individual season this year that was recently really good. I think it's fair to put him at 2. He's been doing it the second longest besides Mahomes in this era. 3, then I'm putting Jalen Hurts. I used to have Joe Burrow here, but Jalen Hurts has played in 2 Super Bowls now. And he's not just played in 2 of them. He's won one of them. Joe Burrow can't say the same. I know Joe Burrow had a great season this year, and that'll go down in history. But Jalen Hurts has 2 Super Bowl appearances that he balled out in both of them. People forget that. Like, if the Eagles would have won Super Bowl 57, he would have probably been the MVP, no doubt, because he had an exceptional game that night besides that fumble. I think that deserves credit. I'm not saying because you had 2 great games, you're, automatically the best. But people forget, you got to write a story to get to that game and get to that moment. And other teams, and I get it, I don't see it with the Bills. I don't see it with the Ravens as much because I'm an Eagles fan. But when you watch every game and you watch every moment of a QB and that development and that progression, it's hard for you not to have a bias. So 1, Mahomes, 2, Allen, 3, Hurts, 4, I got Joe Burrow, and 5, I would leave out of it. I hate to say it, but Lamar Jackson. I know every single 12-year-old that plays Madden is going to be pissed off at me in the comments, but I really don't care at the end of the day because the dude hasn't been in a Super Bowl yet. No, he's got the 2 MVPs, and he's individually a great performer, but he hasn't figured out a way to get the job done yet. Now, if Lamar went out and won a Super Bowl next year, I would probably automatically promote him to number 3. Like, he would get a little bit more slack for me than Jalen Hurts. I would put my bias aside. Because I would be like, okay, individually, recently, he's got a Super Bowl. Hurts has a Super Bowl. I put aside that Hurts played in 1 Super Bowl. It would just make sense. But until Lamar gets to the big game, and if he wins it, I'm going to leave him out of these 4 because Jalen Hurts has been there twice, and I think a lot of people sleep on that.
Yeah, Chris made a really good point, too. It's like, I don't understand why Philly fans or the fan base overall gets so angry and frustrated if you say Jalen Hurts is just at 5 or at 4 or behind Josh Allen or something like that. Like, it's shocking to me. If somebody told me my franchise quarterback is top 5, I'd be pretty happy. I'd be pretty content with where he's at. You know what I mean? There's 32 quarterbacks in the league. Very rarely are you ever a top 5 quarterback in the best football league in the world, right? So I don't really understand. Like, yeah, you can debate maybe Jalen Hurts over Lamar or Lamar over Jalen Hurts or Jalen Hurts at 2 or 3 or 4, but I think in the grand scheme of things, the bottom line is this year Jalen Hurts showed up and he proved that he deserves to be in the discussion, at least. Because before that, I don't think he was. To start the season, I think he sat at like number 10 or number 9 for me, and he slowly carved his way up. Now we'll see what he does the year after, because the 2 years that he hasn't had like absolutely everything around him, it hasn't been incredible. He's had decent seasons for sure, but he hasn't had like the season that he had this year, right? The 2 years he made the Super Bowl, his teams have been pretty good, right? In the two seasons he lost to the Bucks, I believe, in the wild card round, it hasn't looked too pretty, right? So take that into account. We'll see, but I would never judge Jalen Hurts for working with what he's got, right? Like, you got to go to work with the players on your team. And just because Howie has an incredible football mind and can do incredible things with the cap space and sign pretty much anybody, it doesn't mean that Jalen Hurts can't perform and it's just his great team. You know what I mean? So I've kind of tried to fight both ends of this argument in that, yeah, he's got a great team and that definitely helps him. And maybe without a great team, he's not as good, but I'm also not going to blame him, right? Like, if you told me, oh, Jalen Hurts can't be top 5 because of his great team, it's like, so how is he ever going to prove that he's great ever? If your argument is always that he has a great team, it's like, so how does he ever like prove to you? Does he need to score 60 touchdowns in a season? Is that going to do it? Or like what gives? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot that I think you make a good point too about what has he done when he didn't have the talent around him. Now, I'm interested to see that because that day is inevitably going to come. It comes for every QB.
Definitely.
You know what I mean? Whether it's 2029, 2030, 2031. But there's going to be a day when there's a team around him that's pretty depleted just because you got to pay everybody. And I am interested to see now that he has had experience with players like A.J. Brown, like Saquon Barkley, like Smitty. I think Smitty will be here for a while too. That's my own personal take though. But I just think he'll figure out how to do more with less. And that's, like JV said, what I think the really good QBs like Tom Brady, you know, he would go to Walmart, go to the self-checkout, find the white dude that was working at the corner with the vest and say, hey, you're going to be my slot wide receiver and you're going to be a Pro Bowler this year. He's like, sweet, let's go. And it worked. I think that shows not just like Belichick's coaching, not just the wide receivers' athleticism, but there are a lot of athletes out there. It takes a leader. A leader's a winner. And that's what the Patriots had every year. That's what the Chiefs have right now. That's what I think every NFL team's blueprint and what they're going for, what they're looking to build is. And hopefully the Eagles have that within Hurts. But yeah, I think it's definitely an interesting discussion. But I'll tell you what, I'll leave it at this. If I was playing for the Eagles, it would be pretty hard for me to leave Jalen Hurts off this list, especially right now, like a month after we won a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
That would say something, I feel like, about a way I feel about a certain person, whether or not I directly want to say that or not. So maybe like Chris Slade, like earlier, I think I was somebody who wanted Slay here, but maybe Slade doesn't want to be here as much as we want him to be here. There's something to be said for that too.
Yeah, and to caveat that is, yeah, you just won a Super Bowl with him, but you also just got fired by this team. He got cut, but essentially he got fired. So how would you feel if you just got fired from a place about, other people to work? I don't know. And again, I don't think it's really a slight at Jalen Hurts. He didn't come out and say, oh, Jalen Hurts sucks. Like, he didn't say that. So, and you also got to remember the Eagles passing game was like one of the worst in the league last year, stats wise. Doesn't mean it was actually a bad passing game, but stats wise, it wasn't good. So there's that as well. So I don't mind him not being in the top 4, whatever. Who cares? Win a Super Bowl.
That's the thing too that a lot of people don't talk about. How many years was Tom Brady coasting at 4 and 5? It's not about the stats with him. It was about the Super Bowls. It was about the championships. Like, you had guys like Peyton Manning that would come in, Russell Wilson, like all these guys that in our childhood would come in, Ben Roethlisberger, light it up, Aaron Rodgers, and all of them do have one Super Bowl. That's the thing. Like, that's one more thing to say off JV's take. Like, why being a top 5 QB isn't a bad thing either. Most of the top 5 QBs have at least one trophy. Like, if you look at this roster, 2 of them already, and I'm glad our guy's on there. I'm really hyped about it because I didn't think it would be this way. I think who's next is probably Josh Allen. And after that, I would be willing to bet it is 2025 right now. Yeah, 5 years, 6 years from now, I'm going to say Lamar or Burrow, somebody from the AFC North is going to bring one in, I think, as well. So you're going to have somebody, I think, representing that division because they're both exceptional QBs. And I do think that Josh Allen, actually, I think that the Chiefs are going to start to see a decline. And I think you could see a Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts Super Bowl here in the next couple of years with the way that both these teams are trending. Stay tuned.
Yeah, there was that period too where you remember the Patriots. Like I think they went like a decade without winning a Super Bowl or something like that. It was the stretch where they lost to Manning twice, and whatever. That is what I envision somewhat happening to Kansas City. Like they will always be around, just like the Pats were always around, because they have great coaching, defensive coordinator, head coach, Mahomes, right? Travis Kelce can go, they can replace him, that's fine. But like I said to open up the episode, Dalt, I think there are some emerging opportunities for quarterbacks in the AFC to capitalize now that the Chiefs got their taste of winning. They had their three-peat attempt. I do think they might take just a slight step back. For them, that means losing the AFC Championship pretty much, or losing in the divisional round, whatever it is, right? But I do think it's going to open this window now for either Allen, Burrow, for one of those two for sure, maybe Jackson, to step in and actually get some hardware and put up a Lombardi in the stadium. And at the end of the day, like, it's hard for me to believe that more than one of these guys on this list isn't going to have a Super Bowl at the end of his career. Like, three of them don't right now: Burrow, Allen, and Jackson. I think at least two of them will. I can see maybe one of them, maybe Burrow ends up like Marino, and the Bengals are just such a horseshit organization that they just don't do anything. But I think at least two of them will end up getting a Super Bowl.
Yeah. I mean, and it is a good point. Like, a lot of these guys do have at least one: Peyton Manning, Russell Wilson, Tom Brady, Ben Roethlisberger, Aaron Rodgers. Those guys were all consistently top 10, top 7 QBs throughout their career, and they all have at least one. I just pray to God that Jalen Hurts doesn't only get one, because that was literally the best day of my life. It was. So hopefully we can have that soon. I hope you get that feeling soon too, JV, for your Bills.
No, I hope so too, but I'll knock on wood because I've been praying for that for like 7 years. So I'm waiting on it.
I got you, bro.
I think the one last thing on this is, yeah, these are the top 4 right now, but who else is coming out? Like, I'm not too high on Sanders and Cam Ward this year, but it seems like every year there's been another quarterback that's, threatening this top 5 list. I mean, look at Jaden Daniels. If Jaden Daniels has another season like he did last year, it's going to be tough not to put him in the top 5.
Mm-hmm.
So you got those guys as well. So how long are these guys going to be the top 5 list? I could see very easily Jalen Hurts getting pushed down to 8 or 9 again next year if he doesn't win a Super Bowl again, just because the passing stats are never going to be as high as the other guys, because he's a good quarterback, but he relies on his legs some.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. Like, what will happen to Jalen Hurts' ranking if he doesn't win a Super Bowl? I think it all depends on how does he play next year, but you're right. If he doesn't make it to the Super Bowl, no matter what, he's going to be bumped down. When you win a Super Bowl, there's just like an inevitable, you're just there. You're a winner. Like, you can't not put winners in that list. That's why Mahomes for so long is everybody's GOAT. If Mahomes went out and had these individual seasons like that, but didn't have any Super Bowls, it'd be like Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson's insane. He's a great player. But if you put Lamar Jackson on the Chiefs, how many Super Bowls would they have? Well, that's crazy to think about too. Completely different system, completely different coaching. But just to make a point, that Super Bowls definitely matter in the way that people rank you. But that's pretty much all we got for today. I want to give a quick thank you to our guest, JV, for jumping on here with us. JV, can you let everybody know where they can give you a follow or find you at?
Definitely, Dalt. I appreciate you guys having me. I'm the JV Show on pretty much all platforms. You guys can check me out there. Instagram is the biggest right now, so head over, shoot me a follow. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, man, we appreciate you for jumping on here, and we'll definitely try to get you on here again in the future. Hopefully for some Bills conversation
for
or
sure.
something. That way we can be some authentic,
Definitely.
But you have a good weekend, my brother. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, guys. But other than that, that's pretty much all that Chris and I got for you. I do want to give a quick shout out and a good luck to our guy, KJ McCoy. He's going to be on the microphone with his announcing debut tonight I forget the game exactly. It's a semi-professional league. But if you message us, we can get you guys the link. I just texted him in the group chat. So I'll probably try to put something on our Instagram story. So if you're watching on Instagram, stay tuned for that. But good luck tonight, Mac. We appreciate you. We support you. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all we got. You got anything else, Chris?
Nah, it's gonna be great to listen to him on the mic tonight. He's getting close. I mean, ABA, he's getting close. He'll be in the NBA in a couple days. It'll be like 2
In a couple days. I don't know.
Well, I mean, we'll have anybody announce the
relationship.
Sixers game at this point because they suck so bad. Sorry,
He did used to serve Barkley at his old job. So who knows? He could put that on his resume. Stay tuned. But good luck tonight in all seriousness, Mac. We love you. And if you guys are listening out there, we appreciate all of our listeners. We had like almost 50 people throughout the whole show today, which was fantastic. So I appreciate the authenticity. I appreciate you guys coming to support. And we'll see you next Saturday to do it all again. Have a great weekend.